He was 17 years old, and he was dying. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, literally dying. Tuberculosis had collapsed both of his lungs. The doctors in Pontotoc County, Oklahoma, had given him weeks, maybe days. His parents, poor Pentecostal evangelists, had no money for treatment, no connections, no options. And even if he lived, he stuttered so badly that people could barely understand him. He had dropped out of high school. He had no future, no prospects, nothing. He lay in that farmhouse bed, skin and bones, coughing blood, wondering if God even knew his name. Then one night, his older brother walked into the room. "Oral, God is going to heal you, and you're going to take his healing power to your generation." The boy, barely conscious, heard those words, and something in his spirit woke up. Within days, he was in a tent revival. A traveling evangelist laid hands on him and prayed. And Oral Roberts, the stuttering, dying farm boy, stood up healed. Not just physically healed. The tuberculosis left, the stutter left, and a fire entered his bones that would not let him go for the next 60 years. If the cost of anointing stirs something in you, stay until the end, because what Oral Roberts paid to carry that fire will change how you see your own calling. Granville Oral Roberts was born on January 24, 1918, in Ada, Oklahoma. His parents, Ellis and Claudius Roberts, were itinerant Pentecostal preachers, which in 1918 Oklahoma meant one thing: they were poor, not struggling, not lower middle class, poor. The kind of poor where dinner wasn't guaranteed, where clothes were handed down until they fell apart, where survival was a daily negotiation with God. Oral grew up watching his father preach in tents and brush arbors, moving from town to town, believing God for provision that sometimes came and sometimes didn't. And Oral, the youngest of 4 surviving children, carried 2 things he could not shake: a stutter so severe he could barely finish a sentence, and tuberculosis that was slowly killing him. At 17, the tuberculosis won. He collapsed during a basketball game. His lungs hemorrhaged. He was bedridden, wasting away, waiting to die. His parents prayed. His siblings prayed. But Oral was slipping. Then his brother Elmer walked in and spoke a word Oral would remember for the rest of his life. "You are going to be healed, and God is going to use you." Days later, against all medical logic, his parents loaded him into a car and drove him to a tent meeting in Ada. A man named George Monsey, an evangelist no one remembers today, laid hands on the dying teenager. Oral Roberts felt fire enter his body. The tuberculosis left. The stutter vanished, and a call landed on him like a weight he would carry until his last breath. Oral Roberts did not ease into ministry. He was thrown into it. Within months of his healing, he was preaching. 17 years old, barely out of high school, standing in front of crowds with a message he couldn't keep silent. God heals, God is real, and I am proof. His early meetings were small, country churches, brush arbors, anywhere that would have him. But something was happening that no one could explain. When Oral prayed for the sick, they got healed, not occasionally, consistently. A woman with a tumor on her neck came to one of his meetings. Oral prayed. The tumor disappeared overnight. A man crippled by arthritis walked out of another meeting carrying the cane he'd used for years, no longer needing it. Word spread fast, and the crowds began to grow. By 1947, less than a decade into ministry, Oral Roberts was holding massive tent revivals across America. Not small gatherings, tents seating 12,500 people, lines stretching for blocks, healing lines that lasted for hours. Critics called it emotionalism. They called it manipulation. But they could not argue with the wheelchairs left behind. And Oral? He was learning a discipline that would define the rest of his life. He fasted. He prayed. He depended entirely on the anointing. He would say later, "Without the anointing, I am nothing. With it, God can use me." He was not exaggerating. By the early 1950s, Oral Roberts was no longer just a preacher. He was a phenomenon. His tent, a custom-built cathedral of canvas, could seat 12,500 people. He traveled with a full team: sound engineers, musicians, ushers, prayer workers. The meetings ran for weeks in a single city: Tulsa, Dallas, Los Angeles, New York. Every major city in America felt the weight of those revivals, and the miracles, they were undeniable. A young girl born deaf came to a Tulsa meeting. Oral prayed. She turned to her mother and said, for the first time in her life, "Mama." A man with cancer in his spine, doctors had given him months, walked into a healing line, bent over. He walked out standing upright. The cancer was gone. Thousands of documented cases, medical records, before and after testimonies. But with the miracles came the mockery. Mainstream denominational leaders called him a fraud. Newspapers ran headlines accusing him of manipulation. Skeptics planted people in the healing lines to try to catch him in a lie. Oral Roberts did not fight them. He just kept preaching. But the cost of that anointing was becoming clear. He would later write, "Every miracle I saw came through a discipline of fasting, prayer, and absolute dependence on God. Without that discipline, the anointing lifts." He fasted regularly, sometimes for days. He prayed for hours before each service. He lived in a state of constant spiritual tension, knowing that the moment he stopped pressing in, the power would stop flowing. His family rarely saw him. His wife Evelyn carried the weight of raising their children largely alone. The anointing was not convenient. It was costly. Oral Roberts preached a theology that became one of his most controversial and most powerful teachings: seed faith. The principle was simple: whatever you give to God, He will multiply back to you. Plant a seed in faith, whether money, time, or obedience, and expect a harvest. Critics hated it. They accused him of prosperity gospel, of manipulation, of using people's desperation for his own gain. But here's what most people didn't see. Oral Roberts lived what he preached. He gave, sacrificially, constantly. He built Oral Roberts University, a multi-million-dollar institution, on borrowed money and faith. He funded missions, hospitals, and outreaches across the globe. And he paid a personal price most people never knew about. In 1977, his daughter Rebecca, a beautiful, vibrant young woman, died in a plane crash along with her husband. Oral Roberts, the man who had prayed for thousands of healings, could not prevent his own daughter's death. He collapsed. For weeks, he could barely function. His critics pointed to it as evidence that his theology was flawed. If God is so good, why did He let your daughter die? Oral never had a neat answer for that. He just kept believing. And he said this: "The anointing does not exempt you from pain. It equips you to carry it." Rebecca's death nearly destroyed him, but he did not quit. He went back to the tent, back to the university, back to the pulpit. Because the calling was not optional. In 1963, Oral Roberts stood on 500 acres of empty land in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He had no money to build, no architectural plans, no donors lined up. But he had a vision. "Build me a university, train young people to hear my voice, to go where my light is dim, my voice is small, and my healing power is not known." Critics laughed. Denominational leaders said he was foolish. Even some of his supporters thought he had gone too far. Oral Roberts built it anyway. Oral Roberts University opened in 1965 with 300 students. By the 1970s, it had become one of the most influential Christian universities in the world. But more than the buildings, Oral Roberts was raising a generation. He told every student the same thing. God called you, not because you're perfect, but because you are willing. Go where the light is dim. Carry what I have given you. Thousands of students graduated from ORU and went into ministry, medicine, business, and missions. They carried the fire Oral Roberts lit in them. And Oral? He never stopped pressing. He preached into his 70s. He continued to pray for the sick. He wrote books. He built hospitals. He funded missions in countries most people had never heard of. Near the end of his life, he said, "I have kept the faith. I have finished my course, and I leave behind a generation that knows how to hear God's voice." He died in 2009 at the age of 91. Oral Roberts left behind more than buildings, more than books, more than television broadcasts. He left behind a theology of expectation. Expect miracles. Expect God to move. Expect your seed to produce a harvest. It was controversial. It was criticized. And it was undeniable. Because the stuttering farm boy who almost died at 17 touched millions of lives before he took his last breath, Oral Roberts paid for the anointing. He paid in fasting, in prayer, in discipline. He paid in the loss of his daughter. He paid in criticism, in mockery, in rejection from those who should have supported him. And from that place of payment, millions were healed. A university was built. A generation was raised to carry the fire. His life asks one question: what are you willing to pay for the anointing God has placed on your life? Not pay in sin, not pay in compromise. Pay in surrender, in discipline, in obedience when no one is watching. The anointing is not free, but what it produces outlives you. If Oral Roberts' story stirred something in you, tell us in the comments. What is the anointing God has placed on your life, and what are you willing to pay to walk in it? Like this video, subscribe to Echoes of Faith, and share it with someone who needs to know that God still uses surrendered vessels. The price is high, but the harvest is worth it.